depths of Discord, where we're surrounded by bots. It's I Burn My CD and Rock bringing you the latest TurtleCoin podcast. How's it going today, Rock?
It's going splendid, IBM CD. How are you?
Just fine and dandy.
I got a hungry cat over here about to gnaw my leg off for some reason.
Well, they say that if your animals are willing to eat you, that they absolutely love you, right?
Yes, that's a true sign of devotion. That's what I'm told, according to Wikipedia.
Speaking of devotion, for the listeners that have been following along with us here the last couple of episodes, we've got a lot of fun updates for you coming up. We'll be talking a little bit about some of the development updates regarding V2 a little bit later. We'll talk a little bit about system architectures and how different platforms play a role in developing software, and specifically V2 to some extent.
It's going to be some juicy convo, and I think people are going to be really happy to hear some more about staking and how that works.
For sure. And a couple other topics that we'll try to sneak in there as well, but we'll leave those up for a surprise. So we'll kind of kick things off a little bit here with the system architecture side of things. If you've ever developed software before, that wasn't built around a scripting language and was built with something like C or C++ or any of the other languages out there, you've probably ran into what we consider to be cross-platform development hurdles that you'll run into. Does that sound familiar?
It definitely does. And up until a few years ago, it was actually a pretty tough hurdle.
Absolutely. It can be a huge pain in the ass, so to speak, trying to make sure that your software runs great on Windows, it runs on the different flavors of Linux, and of course, if you have any diehard fans out there running Unix variants, right, or the BSD teams, and then ultimately, we still have to worry about the Mac OS users, right?
Yeah, I think there's still one or two of them around, and also not to be forgotten are my fellow Plan 9 users.
A shout out to Plan 9, yeah. You're talking about the two Mac users, and so far I think I've heard of one Plan 9 user, and you are it, my friend.
Technically, that means I am the most popular, most notorious, most number one Plan 9 user in the entire server.
This is absolutely true, but does that mean that it's truly a multi-user operating system, though?
Hey, listen here, son.
Yeah, that was a cheeky stab there, probably a bit of a stretch, but to get more back to the point, one of the biggest problems that we run into is trying to make sure, like I said, that the software that we write runs consistently and in a way that we can account for lack of better words, across all those different platforms, because each platform has a different way of handling things. Yeah, there may be some commonality or similarity between those different platforms that allow us to use things like the standard libraries to make everything work and process correctly, but there are some differences that give us huge headaches. And if you've been following along even with V1, we've ran into problems before with Mac OS X and not having file system components. It's a real pain in the butt is what it comes down to. And there's a couple of different ways that you can kind of approach this in trying to solve this problem when running software. But I heard that there's a couple of tools out there or a couple of languages out there that make it really easy. You know anything about that?
I might know a couple of things about that. Actually, one of my favorite languages right now is a language called Go. It's a cross-platform language that compiles on a bunch of different architectures, a bunch of different OSs, and it's just a really nice, the way I like to explain it to people is like writing C in crayon. So a lot of things are gone, a lot of things don't exist, there's no generics, but then there's also no responsibilities like manual memory allocation and memory management, things like that. Some of those things come for free, some of those things are pros, some are cons to some people depending on the way you look at it, but in general, it's been, I can say it's been a better experience than in other languages trying to write cross-platform code in my experience.
No, that sounds like a good thing then for sure. What kind of things have you written in Go, to give our listeners an idea of what's possible?
Yeah, so I wrote Karai in Go. I'm also writing Rock Wallet in Go. I recently started working on, a couple of different things that I use internally at my at the place where I work. And so it's just been really convenient and really easy to put together CLI programs. I've even made a couple of graphical programs with it using the Fine UI kit. And the greatest thing that I like about Go is that you can get really far just using the standard library. I'm a big fan of having as few dependencies as possible. Something to me that's another popular cross-platform solution is JavaScript. And although JavaScript is fun to write write and everything is there, so to speak, there's a lot of relying on other libraries to get things that should otherwise be for free. So in Go, if you can put up with the simplicity of it and the limitations regarding how many keywords there are in the languages, the common patterns and things and tools that you might be used to, again, like generics, which are eventually coming to Go, then you might like it. It's pretty cool. It's, for me, mostly it's going to be things that run on Linux or that run on a server somewhere. But I've also written Windows code really easily. But that isn't to say that there aren't small caveats. So I mentioned Windows. There's one thing that I do quite commonly in everything that I write is I try to colorize the output. I'm somebody that I'd like to just look for the red on the screen or something like that while I'm just compiling and recompiling. And it just makes it easier for those types of things to jump out at me. So I wrote a little library that colors the output of various things, and it just works for me. Well, I noticed that in Windows, just the normal command prompt doesn't honor those terminal escape codes that I'm using to set the color. And so I ended up having to write a script, or well, not a script, a function that runs at init, and it basically checks for the OS. And if it's Windows, it goes ahead and zeroes out all the variables that contain the escape sequences, and the Windows users just see things in black and white. Well, if you run it on Git Bash, actually, since it's still detecting the OS, I'm not sure, but if you run it in Git Bash, generally, whenever I have those escape sequences in there, or if you run it thinking that it's Linux or something like that, it'll display correctly. So I know that Git Bash displays correctly, Windows subsystem for Linux displays correctly, command does not display correctly, and I think there was one other shell that Windows includes, but it's just been a while since I've had to run one firsthand. But I had to see it first, just in front of my own eyes, and it was pretty ugly. It's just a lot of backslashes and percents and random hexadecimal characters. So if anybody's seen what I'm talking about, it's pretty crazy. But other than that, so some things that I've noted about Golang is that it can compile for just about anything. There are architectures from Spark to AMD 64 to ARM. There's a lot of niche architecture that's supported. In addition to that, there's also a lot of OS support. It can compile things for Android, Plan 9, Dragonfly BSD, FreeBSD, Linux, Apple, Windows, you name it. It can compile for it, except I don't think it can compile for iOS. So that's, it's not necessarily a need of mine personally. That may be a need for, somebody else's need. But I'd say that it scratches most itches pretty well.
It definitely sounds like it, and that couple of things that you said there really kind of piqued my interest a little bit as I've been working on V2, because one of the things that I've been trying to find my way to get done, and I shouldn't say it from the standpoint that I don't know how to do it. It's one of those monotonous things that I really don't want to do, if that makes any sense. It's the logging in the console output, for managing multiple threads and being able to spit that out to the screen. And I definitely need colors. And I was actually playing around with stuff the other day and ran into exactly what you were talking about, totally forgetting that the escape codes in Windows for the color schemes are completely different than in every other OS out there. So it's funny that you mentioned that, which kind of drives home to a point that from a cross-platform standpoint, sometimes languages like Go may fit some tools and some audiences better than others.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of one of those niche things, and the people that like it tend to like it a lot. Another similar and comparable alternative would be Rust, and it has a equally, if not more, enthusiastic community around it. And I think it's just, just speaking personally at this age, it's just whatever the best tool for the job is what I'm going to end up using ultimately. But there are a lot of jobs currently that are on my plate that Golang solves very nicely. So it's easy to not have to dip my toes in anything else and just do that for now, because it's just what makes me happy. And I like the simplicity of it. I like the ability to, I can jump into anybody's code. And this is a quality going way back to the beginning of whenever I started programming in the early days. And it was never easy to go and look at somebody somebody else's code. It's like walking up to a stranger and them saying, all right, go in my bedroom and find my wallet. And, you don't even know which room's their bedroom. And you go in there and you're like, oh my God, what is this? And it's just really tough to read other people's code. Well, whenever you have something like Go that's so simple and it doesn't have hardly any keywords, there's like 3 things you can do in Go. It just makes it really easy to just step through the code, and even in, multiple files and things like that. And I think a big contributing factor to that is that it may be like a Go mentality or just the robustness and well thought aspect of the standard library, but you don't typically see people having to rely on a lot of dependencies and imports and such. And also another great thing about Go is there's no cyclic dependencies. I understand that is a common concern in some other languages. You might know something about that.
TypeScript, JavaScript, Node. I'm looking at you. Yeah, I know what you're talking about there.
I wonder if Dino has cyclic dependencies.
Wouldn't surprise me. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest pains in my ass ever. I know that you've laughed at me a couple of times when I go flipping, throwing tables around the chat because all of a sudden somebody has to update a security vulnerability in a package like Lodash or something like that, and it fires off across every repository. And the worst part about it is that I'm not even using it. Usually it's the linter, or something like that, just to kind of clean the formatting up and make things look pretty, kind of like Clang Tidy when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
That's what's throwing that security vulnerability alert, and Dependabot just goes nuts.
Dude, I've seen it. A lot of people don't have insight into this, but I've seen it many times. And there are entire days where Dependabot will just be reading us the riot act, and we'll just be getting notification after notification after notification. And you know what it is every time? Fucking Lodash. Lodash, fix your shit.
Well,
JavaScript developers,
I guess when
fix
you're
your
writing
shit.
tools that everybody uses, I don't know, but whatever happened, like you said, to writing your own stuff?
I find myself using my own stuff more often than not over other people's stuff. I think there are 2 libraries that I've used in the last year, and it's Gorilla WebSockets and what the hell was that?
The hell was Gorilla WebSockets? I don't know.
No, that was I thought I heard like a Windows alert. Anyway,
not from my side.
I use Gorilla WebSockets and Gorilla Mux, which is just like a request router type deal, multiplexer. So that's basically all I use. Yeah, sorry, I got thrown off. I was in the middle of talking and then I hear a Windows notification and I was just like, oh shit.
You've got mail.
Yeah, well, I'm not running Windows. That's the thing that kind of got to me.
No, I get you. But more to the point with the dependencies, I'm a big fan of trying to write as much as I can myself, but there's so much good software out there anymore that, it's hard to avoid the dependencies in some instances, because trying to write something from scratch that does everything that you need it to do, yeah, you can go down that route, you can bang your head against a table. But then again, like you said in Go, it's a lot easier to code and write those constructs and put things together, right? Versus a language like C++, which, I'm working on building V2 in, where I have to tell you what wood is before I can build a chair type thing, right?
C++ is it's I wouldn't say that it's like more difficult, but I would say it's a lot more specific, and the tool set of things that you can do with it and the things that come with it and the options and the ways there are to do things are so vast because it has such a legacy attached to it. And I think as we see Go grow and get, generics and other concepts added to it, it's starting to kind of emulate the same legacy.
So what do you mean by legacy?
Whenever I say legacy, I mean in the early days, you got like my first C++ was Borland C++. It was relatively simple. I liked it because it was very simple to do things like string manipulation, whereas in C doing that manually was really tough, and I never could really get that right. There were a lot of problems that I had, and so it was something that was attractive to me, and also it had plus, so it had to be good, and I was kind of young at the time, and it just kind of made sense, and I don't know. So it was pretty basic then. My knowledge of it was sufficient to write simple programs and do the things that I needed to do. Then fast forward now, it's almost 20 years later now, and I look at C++ now, and I have to sit down and kind of think about it and look around, and it's not just because it's using more libraries and things like that, but just because it can do more things, and the breadth of the language is that that much higher. There are some people that program now that are still using C++ 17 or whatever version they stopped on, and that's totally fine just because it does so much stuff. And there's no real reason to move further unless you're trying to use some new functionality or keep up with Jones.
Well, let's be honest here. If you're lagging really far behind in the ++ standards, you're probably relying on a little package that we all know and love. And I use that with a lot of sarcasm. And that package.
You talking about Boost?
I am talking about Boost. How did you
Boost
know
is
I
the
was
low
talking
dash
about
of
Boost, buddy?
Boost is the low dash of the C++ world.
Absolutely. And the sad part about it is that if you move up into the newer standards of C++, a lot of the functionality that Boost has is now built into the standard library, just as simple as that. Not all of it, but the lion's share of at least the stuff that people commonly go to Boost for.
That's just me shaking my head.
Yeah, our listeners can definitely hear you shaking your head, so that's an excellent auditory effect. If we ever get fancy enough to, get hoof beats by beating cups on the floor or something like that, we'll have to figure out a sound for shaking our head, right?
Yeah, a subtle rustling of the beard.
A subtle rustling of the beard. I like that.
So tell me, when did you stop using Boost? How long did you use Boost? And what things were you using it for?
I'll be completely honest. I have never personally used Boost in any of the programming that I've done. And
why is that?
To be completely honest with you, it's because I'm really good at finding the hard ways to do things and beating my head on the table and doing it the hard way. However, probably my I don't want to say best, but my worst experience with Boost largely came from hopping into the TurtleCoin code.
And it's my understanding that it's everywhere. Is that correct?
It's not in as many places as it once was. That's for damn sure. That was probably one of the biggest pains in the asses that we had there for a while, because Z and I spent quite a bit of time going through and removing whatever we could find, whatever we could, without totally breaking things. Because there's definitely a trade-off. We could have hunted it down in every corner and every nook and cranny, right? But that would have taken forever. And man, who's got time for that? It's just one of those things that there's still a couple of the Boost libraries that are still used in the V1 code, but for the most part, most of it's out. And I think we're better for it. Hell, to that end, I don't think that the code base, until we did that cleanup, would compile with any newer versions of Boost than 1.67 that we were on for the longest time.
Yeah, and I think it got later on. Didn't it get updated or something like that to 1.72 at some point or something?
Something like that. And I think that there's even a newer version of Boost. Again, I don't use it, so I don't even keep up with it. As a matter of fact, I think it's generally we know that there's an update when some user comes in and goes, hey, look, the latest version of Ubuntu has Boost 1 point whatever in here, and it doesn't compile, or the Boost download for Windows for 1.7.2 or whatever it is doesn't exist anymore. Can I use 1.7.5? And we're like, hell if we know, give it a try, right?
It's bad when the Debian guys are like, hey, can y'all bump these dependencies?
Yeah, that is definitely funny. So kind of talking about that and kind of segueing a little bit from that side of the development discussion, I want to talk a little bit about what's been going on with the V2 development update. How's that sound?
Yeah, only if you start with telling me how much Boost is in V2.
Absolutely none. Zero.
Just checking.
Zilch.
Just checking.
I'll do everything that I can to avoid letting Boost into V2. As a matter of fact, I think it would be a license violation at this point if somebody were to bring some Boost code into the V2 code base.
Are you telling me that Boost isn't Turtle OSL V1?
Oh, I don't think so. So not to dive too far off the beaten track there, but one of the conscious decisions that I've made as I've been putting the code together is to rely on very, very, very permissive licenses for dependencies. So in that regard, practically every dependency that I pulled in so far has been largely MIT licensed. And those that aren't typically fall within the BSD3 clause license or the public domain. So I'm not looking to pull in, Boost. And while the Boost license is rather permissive, I still don't have any reason to use Boost, but I'm trying to keep it as light and open source as possible. But speaking of the Turtle OSL license, you want to tell us a little bit about that, or you want me to dive down into that, buddy?
Go ahead, man. I was actually hoping that you would tell us real quick if you can. So personally, I prefer MIT license or public domain for everything. Can you dive in real quick? What are the differences between MIT BSD3 and the Turtle OSL v1?
Sure. So the MIT license is probably the most permissive license out there, aside from the public domain licenses like, just releasing the public domain, or what's the other fun one? Do what the fuck you want licensing. I think that's what that's called, right?
WTFPL.
Or the unlicensed is another popular one for public domain, but it's very permissive. You can pretty much use the code however you want, wherever you want. You can link against it however you want, and nobody really cares. The only stipulation is that you have to include the original copyright in the source code, and that if you provide documentation, in essence, that it's there, that the copyright is there. The BSD3 clause is a little bit different. Not tons, but just enough. It's different in the sense that you still have to give that copyright attribution, but they also make some claims there that, hey, look, you cannot use the creator's name to back up your software. So for instance, if we used a package by our tongue-tied there, if we used a package that's built by Apple that was BSD3 claused, I couldn't say that Apple endorsed the software, if that makes any sense. That Apple was
totally reasonable.
Turtle. What's that?
I said that sounds totally reasonable.
Absolutely. That's probably the main difference there. And ultimately, it does make some stipulations that, hey, look, you can't do that. You do have to keep the copyright header intact. And I forget what the actual third clause is because it really just complements the first two. So when we talk about this and we think about, hey, look, we're building Turtle V2 from scratch. We want to use our own code. We want to avoid, people doing the things that they do that drive us crazy. And when I'm saying drive us crazy, I'm talking about what we call the shitcoin forkers. What we put together and the effort that we put in is a lot of effort and a lot of time and just devotion, I guess you could say, the project as a whole. And as a creator of content, we are allowed to issue whatever license that we want for the code. And at the end of the day, we still want it to be open source. We still want people to see the code. We still want them to go flipping through it. We still want people to suggest changes and submit pull requests, right? We don't want to shut that down. So what we've done is we've actually created what we call the TurtleCoin OSL license, or open source license, that is based in essence on the BSD3 clause license with just a couple more stipulations, right?
So just to fill it in, I was asking just for the sake of asking earlier, but I actually know the BSD3 clause license. We see it in Go quite a lot. So it has the 3 stipulations, and like the one that you mentioned, you can't get an endorsement by proxy, I guess you'd say, from the developer. You can't say that, hey, I use this library from Nike endorses this software. The other 2 stipulations are in binary form, it must be able to reproduce the license. So you have to be able to print the license. Like there has to be some option in your CLI program or whatever to say license, and it outputs the text of the license. The other clause, I believe, is the license has to be in the source code. So if every single file is prepended with this license, then that's what you're just going to have to do as you're working through it, and you can't just remove that license. I think if you create a new file, though, I'm not sure if it has to be at the top on like a license header or something like that. I'm not sure if it specifies.
It varies a little bit there, and just to kind of clean up on, because I actually just pulled up the OSL license real quick here, so I could state the other stipulations as clearly as possible. But to clean up that one in the binary form, to be a little bit clearer, in the BSD3 clause, the second clause actually says that redistributions in binary form must reproduce the above copyright notice, this list of conditions, and the following disclaimer in the documentation and or other materials provided with the distribution. So basically what that means, you could print that as credits, as you said, or if you supplied documentation with it, like a README file or something like that, then that would have to be included with the binary. But there's actually no requirement to print it from the binary, but a lot of people do, just to make sure that their bases are covered, right?
Yep.
So what's different with the OSL license that Turtle's putting out there. So like I said, we've added 2 additional clauses here, and these are directed at making sure that what we're building, what efforts we're putting forward, continue to be used for Turtle and Turtle alone, while still keeping it open source. The 4th clause, or the next clause that we added, actually makes it very clear that, hey, if you make code changes to our code and, you think you've done a good thing, or hey, if you've done a bad thing even, you have to submit a pull request back to us, and we're putting a time limit on there that you got to submit that pull request within 7 days. So if you're going to fork the repo and pull it across, that's fine and dandy. But the minute that you start changing things, talking to you shitcoin forkers, you've got to submit a pull request back. Now, we don't have to accept that pull request. You just got to submit it back, and you got to notify us, say, hey, look, you're changing things. So it is, a little bit towards the, copyright side, right? And then the 5th clause that we've added here is that the source code, binaries, and documentation that is part of anything that's licensed into the Turtle OSL must be used only with the TurtleCoin network or a TurtleCoin test net that is inferior in nature. So that means very short-lived. In essence, we're writing this code for this project. That's what it's for. It cannot be used for anything else without the explicit written permission of the TurtleCoin developers. So who are the TurtleCoin developers?
Crickets.
That's a damn good question, right? They're all anonymous. Nobody knows who they are. Well, obviously I'm one. I mean, I keep talking about writing V2 software. Rock's been talking about writing Rock Wallet, hopefully Z Palm Tree will make a reappearance at some point. And there's certainly many others. If you go looking at the V1 repository on GitHub, I think last time I looked, there were 70, 80 contributors.
There were a shit ton of contributors. And, I think it just kind of builds up over time. Any project that is around this long and has active development is going to attract some, but for some reason, Turtle has really pulled in a lot. Even though it is kind of concentrated a little bit as time went on, you kind of see that in just about any project. So it's not like it's not to be expected. And I think it's basically just a testament to the amount of specialization that you've come to get in this software, because at this point, you make the majority of the contributions to the software. And though people like me might have some type of commentary or ideological input on it, there's not too much from an engineering standpoint where I just tell you, hey, do this. You pretty much come up with that on your own. And I gotta say, man, you've really got a lot of these things nailed, and it's surprising that we're on the same page about a lot of this stuff.
Well, it is. And I think that comes from, the fact that although we've never met or anything like that, and I think really the only voice chats that we've ever had have been these podcasts. We've been chatting back and forth for what seems like 3.5 years at this point. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, about 3.5.
I mean, the ideologies kind of come into sync. I think about it from the standpoint that when you start grouping developers together, that mindset forms, just like any other herd mentality, right? You start clumping. I wouldn't say that you start thinking the same, but it's those little nudges here and there that kind of get the guiding principles the same. So, it wasn't much of a jump to say, hey, look, we've got to address this licensing issue that while we want to remain open source and we absolutely love open source software, there's got to be a line in the sand here that says, man, you're not going to go dragging our stuff through the mud again. We got beat up and raked over the coals by those shitcoin forkers over and over again. And to this day, they still come in and try to take a good thing and run with it and sully our good name.
There's even people that set up copycat chat rooms. Like there's a Telegram out there right now where some guy just reposts everything that I post in the Discord and acts as if it's him that posted it. I don't know, man. It's really weird. There is no TurtleCoin Telegram. We don't have any involvement in any of that. I don't know. Telegram from the beginning just seemed really scammy, and so I've just never made a home there. So I'm not really sure what to say about that. But the shitcoin forkers really had, I think so far it's pretty understated, the negative impact that they had on the community, the way that it fractured the community and dissipated momentum in an otherwise rapidly growing project. And it seems like every time a fork came out along the way, things just got a little bit worse. People got a little bit more scarce. People got burned by other people thinking that we endorsed it. To this day, there's people that will clone the repo repo or fork the repo over and over and over and over and make a single change in the GitHub web editor. And then for whatever reason, their code doesn't compile and they don't like it. So they delete the repo and then they clone it again. And so these people don't even have a basic grasp how Git works. They don't know how Git works in relation to GitHub. They don't know how the software works. They know just enough to tweak a few knobs here and there, build it, and then launch a shitcoin, and then they're gone in 6 months. And it's just no surprise that every time one of these launches, about 2 out of 3 times, they'll go straight to market. They'll, do whatever they do, maximize their profits, and then they'll leave. And their community is like standing around with their hands out, like, well, those TurtleCoin guys said, this is how you do it. And it's just it gives us a bad name, and it just associates a lot of shitty people with us. All in all, I have so much regret. I blame myself 100% for the whole forking fiasco, because even though the license allowed it the entire time, I think I really kind of championed the idea that we should take a chance on this and see if creating a guide to showing people how to fork this code and how to run it for their own network, my belief was that it would create more developers in the space and more eyes on the code so that people would contribute back their changes and things. And that just never happened. And those contributions were few and far between. So all in all, it was a net loss by like 100x net loss. It was fucking terrible, man. It was probably the biggest mistake that I've ever made in the entire history of TurtleCoin. It's one of my biggest regrets.
Nope, I get it 100%, and for what it's worth, I think it was more than you that thought it was a good idea at the time. But going into V2, I think we learned our lesson, right?
Just real quick, estimate how many forks there were. I know at some point we were counting them, but then we stopped like 2 years ago. Just estimate.
Oh, geez. I just looked at this the other day and I'm trying to remember what it was. I actually pinned something in the Dev General channel just for figuring this out. It's funny because I was looking around to see who had polled it recently.
Okay, so we know it's been forked 717 times. Barely anybody ever contributes, so it can't be more than 200 people that are forking to manipulate the code and help us out. So like 500 forks maybe that we know of that directly forked the repo instead of just cloning the code and pushing it to a fresh repo. Hard to say, but man, I would put the estimate somewhere around 800.
That's probably accurate. I actually just pulled a quick report and it's showing 770 forks from our repo and not pulling from the original, kind of other stuff. And
that's okay. It's just that, forking the code is okay.
Anything back, right?
Yeah, nobody submits anything back, which is like far, far, far down on the list of concerns. My top concern is that they use the software irresponsibly and use it to hurt the community, hurt the public well-being with it. Because a lot of these people out there just know enough to fleece somebody and then disappear. And it just gives all of us a bad name. And there's some of us out here that are trying to do cool things and trying to advance the field of research. And we're not able to do that whenever we have these other people here, pissing in the hot tub. And it's not sustainable to have that one-way relationship where it's just take, because they get really aggressive. They show up in chat. Their users show up in chat because they're too stupid to remove the error messages that mention us. And so people come into chat asking us for help about things, and they start shouting and everybody puts their hands on their hips, and it's like, what fuck, man? How did it all go so wrong that we just wanted to write some software for free and all this shit happened?
Nope, I get you 100%. Like I said before, that's largely why we made the choice to license V2 a lot differently than what we did before. Again, based upon the BSD3 clause with those additional stipulations, and it's important to, in my mind, to let people know that there's actually, for lack of better words, 2 different repos that contain the code for V2. There is the V2 repo. Yep. There is the V2 repo where, I'm currently doing all the work, putting together the peer-to-peer network stuff for connecting the nodes together, building the interfaces for the HTTP APIs, all that kind of stuff, and the blockchain storage, which is currently pretty well framed up, I guess you could say, and peer management management and all those kind of things, which is, the foundation of pulling everything together. And to that end, the V2 repo is, for what it's worth, and you may feel differently about this, but hey, I'm writing the code, right? There are quite a few dependencies that I'm pulling in, because I got to be honest with you, I don't want to keep reinventing the wheel over and over again in C++. I mean, there's plenty of tools out there that do a good job at what they do, and I can work around them after, only hitting my head on the table half as many times as what I would do if I had to write it myself. But, to that end, hinting back at the other repo, like I think I heard you say there, the other repo is actually the crypto repo, which, we've linked in a couple of different blog articles. The crypto repo, for what it's worth, is where all the magic is happening for V2. And I shouldn't say all, but, the vast majority of the magic is actually happening, because a lot of the cool stuff that's coming into play in V2 is largely powered by stuff that is in the crypto repo. And again, that's all code that I've either pulled in from the public domain or MIT stuff, usually via helper libraries, things like, handling JSON and other tools like, big integers like uint256s, that there's no good standard library for that yet. And again, I wanted to avoid Boost and similarly licensed libraries, but I was happy enough to find, a couple of MIT ones for things like that. But all in all, that cryptographic library itself, other than those dependencies pulled in as, helpers to kind of work its way through JSON and some other encoding, that is entirely brand new code. And that code is actually licensed under the BSD3 clause. I didn't put that underneath the Turtle OSL. And you want to take a guess on why I held off from applying the Turtle OSL to that repo?
Probably because would it be because it contains concepts by other folks?
Well, that could be part of it, because concepts are not licensable, underneath copyright, just so we're clear here. You can describe a peanut butter sandwich to me, and I can describe a peanut butter sandwich to you, and we can both go about that different ways and still end up with a peanut butter sandwich on both sides, right? But that doesn't mean that the concept of that peanut butter sandwich is mine. But the explicit directions, and the code, the actual code would be licensable, right? Is copyrightable in that case. So the actual directions that I would give you that you would follow, that I would follow, that you would give me. It's the same thing with code. I mean, even if you port code over between two languages, most times, the copyright has to pull over with it as well, which includes the licensing. But no, this is all brand new implementations of, some concepts, right? That are tried and true, for the most part anyways, right? But it's a brand new implementation. There was no code that was ported over. Only the concepts itself were used as, the starting point, because I knew what we needed to accomplish. I knew what we needed to do. I pulled it over like that. It was as simple as that. And because of that, again, there's the BSD3 clause there, but the real reason behind why I went with BSD3 clause for the new work in the crypto library is not because of any issues with the attribution, because there are some calls to attribution in there. It's actually from the standpoint that, I'll be honest, I got some projects elsewhere, some other things up my sleeve that I want to be able to use it for.
Oh, shit.
And it may not be cryptocurrency related. I mean, that's the thing, is that a lot of the core concepts in there, whether it's the ring signatures or the implementation of ring CT or triptych or any of that other stuff that's currently in there right now, man, the structures there, I can use that for
the
damn near anything I want to use it for, right?
Yeah.
And then coupled with the fact that, hey, look, it's building, the node library as well, so we can bring it into a node project. It compiles to WASM and native JavaScript, or I should say ASM based JavaScript, so it can be used in browser. I mean, it's a pretty powerful toolkit. I want people to use it. I want to use it, right? So I don't want to, stifle the ability to use it just for Turtle. I mean, that's one of the core things that I wanted to license it like that for, is so people feel free to use it. Like, bang on that crypto code. Let's make it better. Let's bring some additional concepts in here. Maybe somebody will hop in there and find a way to kind of speed up some scalar multiplication. That would be great. Or scalar times point multiplication. That'd be awesome. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we fold that into, or link, I should say, we link to that from V2 to pull across those crypto primitives, which makes it very easy. So again, the TurtleCoin V2 software itself is licensed under the Turtle OSL, but pretty much everything else coming into it, including the crypto library itself, is MIT, BSD, or public domain.
That kind of makes sense. In a way, the tools are there if somebody were sufficiently motivated, where they could build their own implementation of something that functions similarly to the parts that we've licensed in Turtle OSL V1. And technically, if they did it without, looking straight at our implementation and rewriting it the same way in their language, basically porting it, I think if they just did their own thing based on the same protocols and the same concepts, I think it would be totally legit, and somebody could possibly use that to build something of their own in MIT license.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of it. I don't think we talked about it a whole lot, and I know it definitely doesn't get any notoriety, but I built a rough copy of a node for V1 in Node.js, if you recall. And matter of fact, it's in the repos right now. It's very basic. It doesn't really do any block validation or anything like that, but hell, it connects to the network.
It connects.
Yeah, it connects to the network. It receives a couple of blocks. It receives a transaction. I mean, it's even in the GitHub Actions logs, believe it or not. It does all those things. And, if somebody wanted to build a TurtleCoin V2 node in Node.js, they could. If they wanted to do it in a browser, as long as you can get the web connections or the connections from the browser to a node, which I think you can, because I think there's a ZMQ library for web now that I think about
shit.
it. Uh-oh. Did I say a magic word or the word of the day? I don't know.
Did you even, was it?
I don't know. I don't know if that's the word of the day or not.
Oh shit.
No. But anyways, yeah, for people to be able to build their own stuff and their own versions. I mean, I think somebody even asked on Reddit the other day, like, hey, if I wanted to build my own node software, could I do that as long as I follow the protocol? And I said, absolutely. You can. And I even gave the example of the TypeScript, the JavaScript implementation that I did, that said, say, look here, as long as you follow the rules and you connect to the network properly and you validate blocks how you're supposed to and you validate transactions how you're supposed to, we don't care how you connect to the network and run it. Use the same crypto primitives, bring those across, use them as an example, do whatever you need to do. We're here to provide what I'm going to call a reference implementation. Does that make sense?
Completely.
So build your own and let that be a hint, to any of those. Go ahead.
The thing that I think that's cool about that is that it gives you the basic building blocks, and anybody sufficiently motivated can go ahead and make what they want of it and do that under just a normal mainstream license. But the ones that want to take the cheap way out and kind of fork everything that we've done, they're going to have to attribute it back ultimately, and it's going to be under Turtle OSL. So I think that's kind of exciting. It's going to change the dynamic a little bit, and in a way, there's not really anything wrong with it. It's your prerogative as as you're the one that's writing the whole thing. It's who's going to say anything about it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I suppose I could put a code of conduct in the repo. How you feel about that?
You're fired.
I knew that was coming.
It's over. I'm writing V2 in QBasic. You heard it here first.
Joke's on you. I'm already 75% of the way there in QB. I got tongue-tied trying to laugh and say it with a straight face. I can't even do it.
Man, QBasic is still coming along somehow.
Yeah, there ain't nothing like a print you suck 20 go to 10.
I heard that they don't even use line numbers anymore. Can you verify that?
No.
Do you have Visual Studio?
I'm calling bullshit.
I don't know, man. I heard that there's a cryptocurrency out there that's using BASIC as their smart contract language.
Oh, that, I'll tell you what, if you could find a link to that, that'd be great, because holy hell. I don't even know what to say, because, I've been rattling around in the back of my head, hey, look, could we do smart contracts? And I'm not trying to totally jump off the bandwagon here on a tangent, but could we do smart contracts, and what language could we use that would make sense to manipulate the state machine inside of V2? And I never even thought of the idea of basic because that's just no. Like,
I mean, if
please.
you hate your users, it makes sense.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if I really hated the users, then, you'd probably do a contract language in what, Java?
You're fired.
Oh, that's twice in one podcast. I love it.
Yeah, it is, Dero. I could send you some articles. Give me 1 second.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. While you're looking that up here, how about you pick a number for me, Rock?
4. No, actually,
4?
no, not 4. 7.
Not 4. 7? You went 7? Is this a
7's on the come out.
Foreshadowing?
Possibly.
Okay, so if y'all have been listening along the last couple of podcasts, we've got a TurtleCoin wallet that is going to contain at least 1 million turtle in it that you can redeem by unlocking the wallet by listening for the words or the mnemonic words to do so. And Rock just picked number 7, and number 7 is the word adopt. Again, number 7, adopt. So at that point there, you start putting those words together, and at some point, if you can get that wallet recovery phrase taken care of and get the wallet restored before anybody else, you could be the owner of 1 million turtle coin or more.
Oh man, adopt some TurtleCoin today.
Exactly. Or, you could scan the wallet when you get all the words and it could be empty because somebody else beat you to it.
I wonder how long it would take somebody to sit there and just wait until there's only 1 or 2 words. It would probably only have to be 1 word left. No, 2 words, because that last word might be easy to figure out. But
jokes on them. It's the Canty Pixels wallet that I bought from him 2.5 years ago. So they're going to be scanning from block 400,000.
You're definitely going to know who got it whenever the swap comes.
Yeah, swap comes, hands on hips, all caps in the chat. Yeah, I got it planned.
Please, sirs.
Yeah, not really, all joking aside, but I'm looking forward to see if they come forward and say, hey, look, man, I was listening to the podcast and I plucked the funds out, right?
Yep, that'd be terrible. That'd be a horrible joke. Oh my God.
Which part of that being a joke? Somebody coming forward and they didn't pull them out, or so? While we're going through stuff and we're talking.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to hit the record button. I was gonna say it would be a terrible joke if you yanked the funds out of the wallet right before the end of the contest.
Oh yeah,
and just be like, well, nope, looks like somebody guessed it.
Nope, not quite.
Oh, that'd be such a dickhead thing to do.
That's not up my alley. But
I sent it to Elon Musk. Sorry, suckers.
Yeah. We give it to now I forget what the kid's name is. Man, I've been trying to ignore his name for like the last week, and you just broke the rules. So
Fexra?
No, not Fexra. Come on now.
ZPOM?
Yeah, fair enough. All right. So next on the list is talking a little bit about some of the things that we've been figuring out, kind of going through some of the mechanics of V2, what we can do to further reduce the overall chain size even more than what we've previously talked about, and ultimately try to keep funds as low as possible on the network, especially for users who send transactions.
I think I know what you're about to talk about, and I'm super excited about it. Does it have anything to do with overall chain volume or size?
Absolutely, it does. It has everything to do with chain volume and size, and it's funny because I don't even think when you and I talked about it before that I even laid it all out. I basically just said, hey, look, what if we did this? And you're like, I like where this is going. Giggity, right?
Yeah, basically, man. I don't know how it didn't get thought of sooner, because it was just kind of in front of us the entire time. And kudos to you for figuring it out.
Yeah, so every once in a while a blind squirrel finds a nut, as they say.
That's a good one. I usually use the even a broken clock is right twice a day type analogy.
That one is also pretty famous up here in the northern part of the United States, but I personally like the blind squirrel analogy for sure. So anyways, talk a little bit about how we can reduce that volume on chain and ultimately reduce the storage. So one of the things that we've talked about so far is the concept that, of course, we have staking in V2. And that staking, as we've discussed before, is the process of you putting up your funds to secure the network. And I'm not going to dive back into that topic again, but what I want to talk about is how do you get the staking rewards?
So that's something that's kind of an interesting topic. Most people would not necessarily ask that, but whenever you think about it, like, am I getting payments every second, every hour, every transaction, every day, every month? Do I have to make 1,000 turtle before I get paid? What's the situation?
So it's funny that you say it that way, because that sounds a lot like what today?
You got me. Sorry, my mind's drawing a blank. I looked over at the fish tank.
It sounds like the miners, right? Like,
oh yeah, definitely, with the pools and everything.
That. And that's a thought process
threshold.
that I don't know that we can break that easy. Now, I'm not saying that drives this process, but that's the same types of questions, to your point, that are eventually going to come. How do I get them? Am I getting these funds sent to me, or these rewards sent to me every block? Or is that how we're doing this? And I got to thinking about it a little bit a couple of days ago. I'm like, oh man, if the blocks contain transactions, right? And we do the math on this stuff, and it turns out that, hey, look, an individual staker may get 0.02 turtle for the block, and then it does that a couple of blocks in a row, right? I'm like, holy hell, all that work that we've done to reduce dust just came back in our face 100-fold.
Oh, and it's important to mention that that's a staker, not a block producer, that's making that 0.02.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. To be very clear, the individual that backs the producer, the validators, right?
Yeah, the person who's doing
and
nothing.
I'm just using that as an example, but the idea is that, there would be, I think we even talked about, and I outlined it in a couple of articles as well, there's up to like 22 individual outputs that are created for each block, and that's one for the producer, one for the validator, 10 for the stakers that back the producer, and 10 for the stakers that back the validator. Man, I'm getting tongue tied, but that's 22 outputs per block. And if those are small, let's say, like I said, 0.02 or 0.01, or maybe it's only one turtle, who knows, right? But it's 22 of them that could potentially be small. It's going to take a lot of outputs to bring up for them to be able to send funds of any like significant amount of turtle,
Yeah. And there's also the portion that the network matches.
Exactly. That portion kicks in there as well. And that's all fine and dandy. And today, if we were having to deal with that, we could try to mitigate that a little bit with fusion transactions, but we made the conscious decision going into V2 that there are no such thing as fusion transactions anymore. There are no such things as free transactions. Every transaction is going to pay its way. So it could become rather costly for people to transact with their staking rewards funds if we paid them directly out to their wallet. So it got me thinking a little bit, going, hey, man, how would I handle this? And during our last podcast, we were talking a little bit about circling back to some of the concepts that may not be the best in the ways that they're implemented today in the banking system, but there are some things that still work technically, and especially if you can get them to work in a trustless system. I got to thinking, what would happen if instead of paying them out those staking rewards directly to your wallet, that we just took those staking rewards and folded them back into your stake? So it just helped your stake grow over time.
So it's like a yield.
Exactly. It turns into a yield at that point. And keeping in mind that technically after the mandatory lock period, you can withdraw your stake at any time. And I even changed it up a little bit where you can withdraw part of your stake with the idea that, hey, look, your stake rewards just keep stacking on top of your stake, for lack of better words. And all of that's tracked in the staking engine. And, as part of the block validations and the transaction validations, when you go to request those funds out, that's when they're actually paid out to your wallet. So we can greatly reduce, the number of outputs that are created on chain, and ultimately lower the number of transactions. So for example, I might wait, and it's my choice at that point. I might wait until I see block rewards from, 1,000 blocks before I pull anything out. And I'll have a singular output that comes out to me as a result of that, versus if I had 1,000 blocks, I can have 1,000 outputs. And not only do I have to scan for those outputs in my wallet, right, as my wallet scans, but I've also got to maintain those, and I'm going to bring those damn things back together again to be able to spend them. It's a rather interesting approach to solving a very, very difficult problem that we experience today in the network.
There's probably a lot of people out there that are wondering what the hell any of this matters or what it has to do with anything. But to put it really simply, network networks like TurtleCoin V1 are proof of work networks. So we have people that are mining, and those miners produce the blocks, and those blocks are pumping whether there's transactions in them or not. Well, periodically you'll see fat blocks at predictable intervals with maybe 14 recipients or however many recipients the network allows, and you'll see it fairly predictably. This is miners getting paid from the pool. The pool pays out miners whenever they pass a given threshold. And so you'll have guys out there that are running all these GPUs and everything, and they're just mining for the sake of mining. They don't really care if there's a transaction in it or not. If there's no transaction in it, it's marginally better, I guess, but only slightly, and it doesn't really matter. But whenever we're moving to V2, the whole reason why we're moving to V2 is largely in part to reduce that chain volume. We don't want the chain to be growing so much, not only because our signing scheme is different and our crypto fundamentals are different, but also because we want to cut down on some of that volume of some of that overhead and some of the negative qualities of having miners. So by having these yields on your investment kind of fold back into, well, I wouldn't say your investment. Maybe I should scratch that part. So
investor.
Anyway, having your yield increase instead of being paid out immediately, and also giving you the option to be paid out, I think is kind of the wisest choice as from an engineering perspective, and like the amount of volume that's going to be on chain, because there's going to be, like you said, a lot of people that are going to be receiving a lot of tiny inputs, but not only that, there's going to be a fee associated with it anytime that they move those, and the more of those inputs there are, the more that fee is going to increase. The fee is per byte, and a lot of people might not be thinking of that. It's like whenever you're trying to buy things and you have a handful of pennies, it's going to be a lot of damn pennies to go out and buy something as small as like a hamburger. Well, whenever you're a small miner on a big pool, then you're getting a lot of those little tiny pennies. So whenever you go to move your coins, not only are you paying, you're probably using a remote node, so you're paying whatever the ridiculous fee is on those.
Hey. What do you think's funding this award wallet?
I hear you. And then you're not only paying the fees on that, but you're also paying the fees anytime you send the transaction, because the byte size is going to be really high, because you have a list of like all these different little pennies and stuff like that going into the transaction, which swells the size of the transaction immensely. So think about it. Every time you make one of those transactions, that's going to go on the chain. And if we know that we have a predictable volume of that flowing into the network, and it's just a constant amount, then that eventually is going to become a problem. We're going to have a lot of just inherent weight sitting on the network and coming in at a predictable rate like we do now with proof of work. I wish I could figure out, it would probably be easy math to figure out, but I wish I had the time to do the math on probably how much of most blockchains are just volume from miners getting paid out. And if we can eliminate that, it'll be a really good bonus to sync speed, which means, like, let's say you're starting up a brand new wallet or a brand new node or whatever, and you want to get it running as soon as possible and in sync as soon as possible. You want that download size to be really small. You want the size of those transactions to be really small. And whenever you have, something like our current blockchain, it's like 165 gigabytes right now, 170?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's a big amount of data. And so you compare that to what it could be, maybe, let's say if we had the V2 technology back in the day and V1 was all V2, then it would maybe be like 6-8 gigabytes, something like that.
Honestly, we were saying 6 to 8 gigabytes last podcast episode, and that was before this stuff came up. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, we're talking about storing the transactions that people send, and that's it, period.
I think V3 is just going to be a post-it note that we all pass around that says, I owe you some money, and that's it.
Well, you know what the funny thing is about that post-it note? I think we're going to be texting that picture back and forth, because otherwise our transaction times are going to be atrocious.
Not if I don't have a phone. Haha, tapsforehead.gif.
Yeah. Well, you'd probably do better with a cell phone if it didn't still support that old version of GPRS.
But I like having friends when I make phone calls.
Yeah. But anyways, to that point, the size of the chain, I'm not going to claim or even like say with any definitive background to it, but the V2 chain is going to be tiny. The actual chain itself. I'm not saying that the that the storage on disk isn't going to balloon a little bit, because of how key value stores work and how that kind of stuff works. But the chain itself is going to be tiny because, like I said, it's going to be the blocks and pretty much just the transactions that people send. And
the parts that matter.
Yeah, exactly. And the parts that matter. I mean, I think I even made a joke, in one of the articles, driving at, I think it was the signature sizes or possibly one of the other ones, where I made a joke that, man, the blockchain may fit on a floppy disk for a while. And man, we might be getting close. Maybe I just got to hop in there and add some compression and we'll be able to hang on a floppy disk for, a year for all that I know.
I think I have some dual densities around here somewhere.
Oh, that's okay. I still got the ones you can flip over and add more.
Oh, shit. The first time I saw that, my mind was blown. I was like, of course, because cassette tapes. And so, fast forward a few years, CD drives came out and things did not work the same way.
No, not for a while. But I did find, digging through a stack of my stuff here, some double-sided, dual-layered DVD-Rs.
Bro.
I know, right? And I didn't even want to put it in a drive to find out what was on it. I was too scared of why I had that much capacity in my hand.
What does the foil look like on it?
I don't know. But speaking of the foil, oh man, I was watching a How It's Made, and this is totally off topic. I was watching a How It's Made the other night because I'm really good at, and it drives my wife crazy, watching How It's Made before bedtime and right before I fall asleep, watching them on YouTube, right? And I was watching this one on how compact discs are made. I don't know if you watch this stuff, but
I love that show.
Yeah, I had never seen this episode before, and I gotta be dead honest with you, I have never looked into how CDs are made before, but the process was that, at least with the ones that are pressed, the data isn't actually stored on the foil or in the foil.
What?
Yeah, it's stored in the plastic. The plastic reflects the light, and the foil's just, there's a backing to actually reflect the light back to the laser. It's the plastic that changes the waveform.
Get the fuck out of here.
I know, right? And I actually had to rewind and watch the episode 4 times because I'm like, wait a minute. Because they literally press the plastic, right? And it says, all right, now the data is encoded on there. Now they'll put the foil backing on there to protect the disc. And I'm like, what? The foil backing's to protect the disc? What the hell are you talking about?
I'm calling bullshit. I'm gonna have to see this. My feeble mind cannot.
I will find the link and I will be happy to send it to you, because immediately everything that kept rolling through my mind was all those CDs that I had accidentally destroyed. I burned my CD that I destroyed by scratching the foil and thinking that they were completely dead. All I had to do was dip them in some silver or, melted aluminum or something like that, right? To put a backing back on them and then they'd work again. I might actually be able to find my Bitcoin wallet.
Oh, man.
But anyways, yeah, I'll send you the link. And I know that went totally off topic, but it totally jogged my memory on it.
Man, I wouldn't be surprised. That's kind of the same way that regular records are made, acetates, dub plates, that type of stuff. It's the master imprints onto the plasticky material itself.
Yep.
But it's little grooves instead. I don't know. I could just imagine how one speck of dust would just wreck everything, and I just can't see China living up to that standard. No offense, China. I'm just saying.
No offense, China. But anyways, to come back around to the topic. So
scaling the chain. So whenever people ask about what's your scaling strategy, whenever people ask what's your scaling strategy, keeping the transactions very small is very high on our list, because this is you don't get to reset the chain very often, and this is an opportunity that we'd like to make the most out of. This is something that could definitely help us out by making our blockchain smaller, and also the growth of it over time. Sometimes some of these changes that you make, you either have to make it at the beginning or you have to make it through the use of a hard fork, depending on how much gravity that change has, so to speak. So this is a unique position for us to be going into V2, and not only that, but being able to start with a fresh chain. So we want to make the best foot forward.
Absolutely. And in that regard, there's a lot of things that, as I've gone through, and I think I even mentioned them to you a couple of times here recently, that I've had to kind of tweak a little bit as I've been putting code together for V2, that originally it sounded like a good idea to do it XYZ way, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty for that future compatibility and not knowing what comes next, got to make a couple of decision choices where you have to have a little little bit more flexibility there, but nothing that's show-stopping. It just allows us to be able to do upgrades in the future without necessarily having to do a massive hard fork, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I noticed, hard forks have their utility and stuff, but in the past, the motivation for, I guess responding to hard forks and soft forks are kind of an inherent side effect of the way that the software works and the way that consensus is achieved. But I think that, wow, I totally just lost my train of thought there.
Hard forks, softwares, how it's made, CDs, DVDs, 8-track.
God, you're killing me. All right. So, oh yeah. Oh, I remember where I was going with it. Okay. So, hard forks have their utility and everything, but the issue is that the whole reason why consensus operates this way is because it was designed and envisioned as a way to solve contentious issues within the community. You'll see more of this in Bitcoin than you will in other communities. So it's a mechanism to allow a democratic solution to contentious issues. Now, fast forward to Turtle, obviously not comparing it to Bitcoin at all. It's completely different. And for us, rather than the way it happens in Bitcoin, where there's like a rallying cry and their community almost swells during times of hard forks and soft forks and stuff, in Turtle, it's not the same. I think that our user base is more of like a introductory level type of user. And I think that every time that we have hard forks, people are like, what do you mean my software isn't good anymore? I have the wallet right here. It opens up. It just says it can't sync. What do you mean I have to update? Well, do I need a new computer or what do I do with this? And real quick, you could see people's eyes roll in the back of their head and they start thinking like, is my 33 TurtleCoin even worth trying to sync all these blocks for the next 3 weeks? And I think that's an issue that is, it kind of weighs heavy on me because I think that every fork along the way, at least speaking in terms of the hashing algorithm, the mining algorithm, as some people would say, I think we lost hash power along the way. And if you, every time we've changed the algorithm, the hash power goes up and down exponentially because the way that it works. But overall, though the hash rate may have been going up, we may have actually had less miners just because of the way that the hashing algorithm makes the amount of hash rate look. But whenever you do the math on it, I think we may have lost miners to an extent every time that we've made a fork because some people just get tired of updating every 3 to 6 months or whatever. And I think in the end, a lot of people just want something that they can stick with. Does that make any sense? Does that resonate to you?
Absolutely. And that's why I guess I'm saying anyways that a couple of things and a couple of changes that I've made here recently to some of the original plans, at least when it comes to things like the peer-to-peer network, are more flexibility there because it gives us the ability to do soft updates. I guess is the right way to kind of phrase it, right? And be able to, have people running 2 versions of the software but still get the job done. But maybe there's additional features down the road that we don't even know what they are right now or what they could be, but it doesn't make it so the old version breaks, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so that's kind of typically how we've managed forks to an extent now in V1. You get a certain amount behind and eventually the network refuses to include you in the peer swarm.
Correct. And part of the reason why we even implemented that, in all honesty, wasn't necessarily to force people to update, although it does help, right? It was largely because of all the forks that we talked about before. They were hopping into our peer-to-peer swarm without changing their network information and basically overloading nodes with blocks and shit that didn't belong to us.
Shitcoin forkers.
Yeah, exactly. Shitcoin forkers. So over time, we just keep bumping that version. And in all honesty, aside from that, really the only breaking change that I can think of that really kind of made people stop and wonder, aside from the mining, would have been the change to the node API and when we actually went to V1.
Oh,
right?
dude. Oh, And also to wallet API from Turtle Service.
Well, they saw that coming. We had been talking about it for like a year.
I think people were really expecting us to port it to the Node CryptoNote pool software, or I think they were thinking that somebody else was going to publicly release it.
Oh, for sure. And I think, I'm trying to remember, I think I even put together, I think I did do some code in the pool software for Wallet API, but I never went back and made the changes to the pool software for the new Node API, the Daemon API, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that overhaul was pretty significant.
But in all honesty, it's like 5 lines of code that they need to go change.
But if anybody knows how to read SwaggerDoc, also they're fine.
Exactly. We've taken a different stance on some of this stuff that, we'll give you the tools, we'll point you in the right direction, we'll answer your questions, but I don't know we can do it all for you anymore. People seem to, while we all want it all and we want it all right now, it's just that focus has to change, right? From a support and standing things up. Now the project is 3+ years old, right? Coming up on 4 in a relative hurry. We're getting ready for V2. We're putting all this stuff forward, going back and digging back through old code. Man, not to go on another tangent here, but I went looking through the old crypto, the old crypto library the other day, or the other branch of it, I guess you could say, to make a small change in it, just for some better randomization of bytes. And I looked at it and I went, holy hell, this code is complete and utter horseshit. Like, I didn't even want to work in it, even though I knew exactly where I was going, exactly what I needed to do. It was just ugly to me because I've been looking at the V2 code for so long, right, that I didn't even want to touch it. I mean, I hate to say it, it's almost like that with the V1 code base now, so much so that I don't think anybody noticed, but I went into the permissions of the V1 repo and set it where only prior contributors can interact with the repo.
That's the nuclear option, so to speak, in open source circles.
Well, it's not quite that nuclear because it's not marked as archived, but we need to, as we've talked about before and definitely noted in the articles, at some point the V1 repo will go into an archive state, right? The closer that we get to V2, I think we're going to have one more V1 release, believe it or not, for a couple of small API updates and a couple other small changes as well. What's that?
I said, one thing.
Yeah, we got to sneak it in there because there's actually been a couple of bugs and a couple of seed nodes and stuff like that do need addressed. So
there was another thing that I thought about. So the main repo, TurtleCoin/TurtleCoin, has like all these stats and all this history and everything like that. What we should do is migrate everything to a V1 branch and then start over on a V2 branch, which is now the new master. And that way we don't forfeit all the forks and likes and subscribes and whatevers.
That's kind of what I was thinking about as well, but I wanted to make sure that at least on the V1 repo as it stands today, that we still get a couple of issues that pop open on occasion, and a lot of times it has nothing to do with the core software itself. So I wanted to kind of slow that down, and obviously there's not been a whole lot of development there, although I did just see that one of the seed node operators updated his seed earlier today, right?
Oh, I saw. We had a seed in the University of Sao Paulo. Could you believe that?
Yeah, that's cool. And as a matter of fact, while we've been in the podcast,
shout out to that guy.
There was one that came in for Brazil again, just like in the last hour here.
Shout out to Brazil. You guys are killing it.
Absolutely. But yeah, I'm all for preserving that history and kind of coming in there and moving it onto its own branch and then doing a force push.
What?
A force push, where I go stomping all over it.
I thought that's what you said, but I was like, is he really?
Yeah, I don't know. It could have been a Bill Cosby joke, or it could have been a Star Wars one. It's hard to tell.
Fucked up. That's so fucked up.
Well, I don't think he's listening. so
I
it's
think I
all
just
right.
heard the sound of the Apple Store delisting our podcast feed.
They don't listen.
They're going to send us to the dungeon with Rogan.
Nothing wrong with that. I hear that's a pretty good place to be. But yeah, to that end, we'll figure that out, and I can get that straight now. So maybe it won't go the archive route like we initially thought. But
or what we could do is we could alter the hash chain somewhat so that GitHub a different repo and then allows us to upload like a snapshot of V1 with the full Git history up until that point into another repo, like a new repo, but name it turtle-v1 or something like that, and then archive that.
I think I've done this before.
Or we just tell everybody to go to the Cucumber token repo. I'm just saying.
Oh, Cucumber token. I think that's going to keep coming up for a while. Yeah. No, I mean, we'll figure it out. And I know that I've moved some repos around with full history before and stuff like that without doing the fork, because I know that was a big problem there for a while. So that's not that big of a problem. But there's ways to make it work for sure, and we can certainly pull it off. The branch, I know I can stomp all over the master branch and overwrite the history there and kind of diverge the master branch from the current branch, if that makes any sense.
One thing that I didn't think about is the background video to these podcasts is a visualization of the Git history in the main repo. And so in a way, we've already kind of archived that with the history. And I wonder how it would affect the way it looks after you change it.
Well, probably if it's like most of the tools out there, it just follows the master branch or whatever branch you give it. So there's going to be a whole lot of my little name tag flying around for quite a while.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. We'll get. I mean,
that's fine with me. I don't give a shit. I'm just saying,
Yeah, we'll figure it out when we get closer. Hopefully here in the next couple of weeks, if not sooner, I'll have some test code up for some people to start playing around with. I'm not going to call it a test net, so I'm going to be careful. It's not going to be a test net, although it will test the peer-to-peer stack and the peer-to-peer network. Sure that all fires off okay and that everybody can get connected up together, but we're making pretty good progress. I think things are going good, and I think we got a good route ahead of us, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, man, you're doing really well.
All right, I think that's all that I've got for this episode here. You got anything you want to add, Rock?
No, that's about all I've got. I'm about to put my head on a pillow.
I can totally hear it. I need you to.
It's been a long day, man.
Kick it up to 11 week for me, buddy.
It's been a long week. I'm just resting up for Juneteenth, man.
Juneteenth.
I can't spell it, but I like it. I get the day off.
Fair enough. All right. Well, we'll wrap that up with this episode of the latest TurtleCoin podcast. Until the next one, stay safe.